Welcome to the Synthesis of Yoga, the book that changed my life. For those who are new, we are studying Sri Aurobindo's Synthesis of Yoga. We are in the part 1, chapter 6, the Ascent of Sacrifice 2. In our last episode, number 81, we learned about how when the human love, when it ascends all the way to the supramentalization, supramental love, that love become an immense power of self-expression and self-organization. And that alone can successfully deal with all the instrumental layers, mental, vital, all the way to the physical, and fundamentally transform them. And with that comes the possibility of truly becoming one with this multiplicity, with all people, all creatures, the whole material life, in profound oneness. At the same time, the differences become the enhancing diversity, joy, and play of life. And that evolution that is unfolding on earth become our play field. So with both ascent of knowledge and ascent of life, ascent of love, both when it goes all the way to the supramental level, that is where its full power is revealed. So we have completed the ascent of sacrifice, the sacrifice of knowledge, sacrifice of love. Both are ascending towards a higher possibility, which is ultimately the supramental consciousness and its manifestation that will enable and culminate in that evolutionary step Sri Aurobindo is proposing. Now we are moving on to the third sacrifice, the sacrifice of works. We are on the episode 82. In the description, you will find the link to this chapter. I highly recommend following the text line by line so that we can immerse in Sri Aurobindo's consciousness as these words become our doorways to come in touch with him and internalize his consciousness, its patterns, so that in a way it reformats our mind, our brain, our consciousness. Into the third, by the way, we are on paragraph number 16. Into the third and last category of the works of sacrifice can be gathered all that is directly proper to the yoga of works. So the works of sacrifice, there is works of knowledge, works of love, then there is works of will in itself, the yoga of works. So into the third and last category of the works of sacrifice can be gathered all that is directly proper to the yoga of works. Directly proper. So Sri Aurobindo so far dealt with the faculty of knowledge and its works, knowledge work. Then he dealt with the faculty of love and works of love. Now comes the will that gets into action. That's where the yoga of works proper is. For here is its direct field of effectuation and major province. It is the major province, other provinces. The province of love, works of love, province of knowledge, the works of knowledge. These are smaller provinces of the yoga of works. The major province is the yoga of that will in action and its effectuation. These are really the main province that we will be exploring. Into the third and last category of the works of sacrifice can be gathered all that is directly proper to the yoga of works. For there is its direct field of effectuation and major province. It covers the entire range of life's more visible activities. Visible activities. Our thought and movement of knowledge and exploration of knowledge need not be so visible. It can happen inwardly, largely. So is the works of love. There is an inner work. Whereas compared to that, life's works in this material domain is far more visible. The will in action is far more visible. It covers the entire range of life's more visible activities. It is more visible compared to works of knowledge and works of love. Under it fall the multiform energies of the will to life. Here, will is capital and life too is capital. Will to life is hyphenated into one word. So, will to life. It's a divine will to life, expressing in life the divine will. Multiform energies of the will to life, throwing itself outward to make the most of material existence. Here on earth, we have our material existence. In this material existence, there is a will to life operating through us. Every living form wants the full expression of its life, and there is a will to life, an intensity with which it defends itself. It protects its boundaries. It asserts itself. It produces its food. It hunts for its food, lives on other life forms. There is a will to life even when it is struggling against other life forms. In the lower nature, we see the struggle of various life forms, though at a larger scale, at an ecosystem level, they are all moving in harmony. But when we look at an individual life, there is a will to life in it. It defends its right to live and propagate and thrive. But all such thrivings come together, woven into a larger symphony of collective life. So it covers the entire range of life's more visible activities. Under it fall the multiform energies of the will to life. There is a multiform energies throwing itself outward to make the most of material existence. So it has to deal with the material existence. It is a life in matter. And in this material existence, it has to make most out of this material world. It is here that an ascetic or otherworldly spirituality feels an insurmountable denial of the truth which it seeks after and is compelled to turn away from terrestrial existence, rejecting it as forever the dark playground of an incurable ignorance. Here, ignorance is capital I, avidya. And truth is also capital T. Truth and ignorance. These are the two extremes. And the seeker of yoga is seeking truth. We find ourselves to be living in ignorance, bound in this material life. From ignorance to truth, from avidya to vidya. That is the journey. But in that search to find that greater truth, the ascetic or otherworldly spirituality, the tendency that is there in mainstream spirituality, tendency towards asceticism, otherworldliness, it finds this will to life in this terrestrial existence the playground of an incurable ignorance and something that is nearly impossible or practically impossible to transform. Therefore, don't deal with it, renounce it, reject it, get out of it. That was the solution brought in by the otherworldly ascetic approaches to spiritual growth. It is here that an ascetic or otherworldly spirituality feels the insurmountable denial of the truth. There is a denial of the truth of oneness, truth of freedom, truth of delight, truth in so many different ways, harmony, love, oneness, freedom. All this finds its denial in our material existence. And life of the individual is competing and struggling with other life forms, egos clashing with each other, denying the fundamental truth of oneness, fundamental truth of love, harmony. Therefore, this is like insurmountable denial of the truth which it seeks after. So the spiritual seeker is seeking after the truth, but you can't find it in this world, and is compelled to turn away from the terrestrial existence. Terrestrial, terra firma, this is our earthly existence. In this terrestrial existence, rejecting it forever, the dark playground of an incurable ignorance. So since it is insurmountable denial here, therefore they reject it as if it is a dark playground of an incurable ignorance, insurmountable denial, incurable ignorance, dark playground. These are the imagery that we are seeing here. And that had been the experience of life here. And the truth that has been discovered by the seekers that exist in its pristine purity, wideness, infinity, freedom, ananda. Whereas when it comes to this life here, it is bound, narrow, conflict, disharmony, degeneration, disintegration, evil, darkness, all that. Therefore, the conclusion, it is impossible to deal with it. It cannot be changed. It cannot be surmounted. It is incurable. Leave it. It is here that an ascetic or otherworldly spirituality feels an insurmountable denial of the truth which it seeks after and is compelled to turn away from terrestrial existence, rejecting it as forever the dark playground of an incurable ignorance. Yet, It is precisely these activities that are claimed for a spiritual conquest and divine transformation by the integral yoga. So here we are really meeting that core, the life divine that demands spiritual conquest and divine transformation of this very field of ignorance. Yet it is precisely these activities that are claimed for a spiritual conquest and divine transformation by the integral yoga. Abundant altogether by the more ascetic disciplines, accepted by others only as a field of temporary ordeal or a momentary, superficial, or ambiguous play of concealed spirit. So, there is certain partial acceptance as a concealed play of the spirit. Temporarily you accept it, but your ultimate goal is to walk out of it into the pure, formless, eternal, timeless, birthless, deathless existence, rejecting this world. While in this world you accept the illusions and the play of it, the veiled spirit playing through all that. But you don't fundamentally consider this world to be a world that can eventually be a playfield and an expression of the divine, eternal freedom, ananda, and delight can be here. That is not accepted. It is possible only in the freedom of the eternal spirit above, not here in this material world. That had been the stand. Abundant altogether by the more ascetic disciplines, accepted by others only as a field of temporary ordeal. So, more ascetic disciplines abundance it altogether. Others consider it as a temporary ordeal or a momentary, superficial, or ambiguous play of concealed spirit. Momentary, superficial, ambiguous play of the concealed spirit. This existence is fully embraced and welcomed by the integral seeker as a field of fulfillment, a field for divine works, a field of the total self-discovery of the concealed and indwelling spirit. So, three things he is bringing here. A field of fulfillment, a field of divine works, a field of total self-discovery of the concealed indwelling spirit. So it's not only recognizing that there is an indwelling spirit, however concealed it is, there is a concealed indwelling spirit. But there is a total self-discovery possible of that concealed spirit here in this material life. There is a complete fulfillment that is possible, and a field is a field of divine works, not stumbling, ignorance-bound human works. A divine works and its expressive harmony and delight of supreme ananda is possible here in this material life. Now that is the claim and assertion of integral seeker. A field of fulfillment, a field of divine works, a field of the total self-discovery. We can have partial self-discovery, a truncated self-discovery. When we deny this material world and withdraw from it and discover the self above, it is a self-discovery, but a limited one. It's not a total self-discovery in their full spectrum of existence. From the formless to the multiplicity, there is a full spectrum of existence of the Supreme Being. To have a total self-discovery, we need to discover the self across this various planes of existence, all the way down to this material world, where oneness is recovered in the thriving multiplicity. Abundant altogether by the more ascetic disciplines, accepted by others only as a field of temporary ordeal, or a momentary, superficial, and ambiguous play of the concealed spirit, the existence is fully embraced and welcomed. This existence is fully embraced and welcomed by the integral seeker as a field of fulfillment, a field of divine works, a field of the total self-discovery of the concealed and indwelling spirit. A discovery of the divinity in oneself is his first object. So that's where it starts. Discovery of the divinity within oneself, that's where it starts. But a total discovery too of the divinity in the world. So that's the extension. First is discovering divinity within oneself, then enlarging and expanding it into the divinity, discovery of the divinity, the total discovery of the divinity in the world. When we say world here, we are referring to this material world, not any other subtle dimensions of existence. In this very material world itself, behind the apparent denial offered by its scheme and figures. So there is an apparent denial. That denial, world appears to be an utter contradiction of the divinity. There is a denial of that, but it is an apparent denial. We have to go beyond this apparent denial to see the divinity, discover the divinity here. Behind the apparent denial offered by its scheme and figures, all the figures of our life, material forms, starting with all the material mineral world to thriving life world to mentalized matter. And at last, a total self-discovery of the dynamism of some transcendent eternal. There is a discovery of the dynamism. It is the dynamic force that is creative, that is manifesting these worlds. There is a static dimension of the eternal, the uncreated, formless existence. Then there is a dynamic side manifesting as this world. And that dynamic dimension aspect is to be discovered here in this material existence. The dynamism of some transcendent eternal. So there is this transcendent eternal that is beyond time and space, formless. That has a dynamism. It is operating here as well. That is to be discovered, a total discovery of the dynamism of some transcendent eternal. That is, supermind has to be discovered. The dynamism of the supermind manifesting all these worlds, this is something we need to discover. For by its descent, this world and self will be empowered to break their disguising envelopes and become divine in revealing form and manifesting process, as they now are secretly in their hidden essence. Every material form in its hidden essence is fundamentally divine. All forms of existence in this world is fundamentally divine, but it is an essence that is hidden. Now, from being hidden, it has to be brought out into expression, so that the forms are what Sri Aurobindo is referring here as a revealing form. Forms reveals the hidden divinity. Not only that, it is not a world of only forms, it is a world of processes, manifesting processes. So it's not only revealing through the increasingly transparent forms. When I say transparent, I am referring to form becoming increasingly revealing of the spirit within it, so that there is the expression, visible expression of the divinity and its manifesting process. So the matter itself evolving, becoming more and more expressive robe, substance of the spirit. That is where the divinization is in this material world. And that is the destiny of the body itself, destiny of matter itself. Matter had been evolving over millions and millions of years. Our human body as a biomass is a highly evolved material substance, but its evolution is incomplete. It will evolve further to reveal the hidden veiled divinity, so that this biomass of our body itself become a revealing substance and process of manifestation of the divine. And this will be possible when a total discovery of the dynamism of some transcendent eternal by its descent, this world and self will be empowered to break their disguising envelopes. Otherwise, these envelopes are very much like a hard crust. It's a disguising envelope. It covers up the true, hidden, essential divinity. So once that empowerment happens, then they become the divine in revealing form and manifesting process, as they now are secretly in their hidden essence. Secretly, they are already that, but it will become more visible. A discovery of the divinity in oneself is his first object. But a total discovery too of the divinity in the world behind the apparent denial offered by its scheme and figures. And last, a total discovery of dynamism of some transcendent eternal. So there is a first discovery within oneself, then an extension in the world, and then a total discovery of the dynamism of the transcendent eternal, referring to the supermind. And it's for by its descent, this world and self will be empowered to break their disguising envelopes and become divine in revealing form and manifesting process, as they now are secretly in their hidden essence. This object of the integral yoga must be accepted wholly by those who follow it. So, very clear, straight statement. This object of integral yoga must be accepted wholly for those who follow it. So, if one is into integral yoga, you are here to embrace this very material life itself in its totality, and all the three aspects of its self-discovery, discovering of the divinity within oneself, discovering divinity in the world, discovering that dynamism of the eternal that is above, and bringing that into this world so that this world become a revealing form and manifesting process of the divinity which otherwise remains veiled and hidden. So this is something that we as seekers of integral yoga must consciously accept. It's important to repeat this again and again because in the process of yoga, we begin to discover the profound peace as we withdraw from the world, a profound calmness, freedom, an inner liberation. And there is a profound temptation to merge into it and increasingly neglect this world. And if you go increasingly in that dimension of profound inner freedom and peace, it will become increasingly difficult to engage with the world if you don't consciously bridge them early on. And it becomes increasingly an imbalanced development. So to know that the bridging is absolutely essential for our integral yoga, otherwise it will not be integral. This is very, very crucial. We have to keep that in mind. But the acceptance must not be in ignorance of the immense stumbling blocks. So, no romantic fantasy about an easy way. There are immense stumbling blocks on this path that lie in the way of achievement. On the contrary, we must be fully aware of the compelling cause of the refusal of so many other disciplines to regard even its possibility, much less its imperative character, as the true meaning of terrestrial existence. So, various disciplines of yoga have denied this very meaning of terrestrial existence, not even considering it as a possibility. So, one thing is to look at it as a possibility, other is to look at it as a imperative necessity, an imperative character. This world is a world moving towards an expression of the divine. This is an imperative necessity from Sri Aurobindo's integral perspective. That is the very reason for manifestation. That is the very purpose of earth as an evolutionary field, an evolutionary laboratory. Divine is playing here in this earth, on this earth, in this material world, this tiny beautiful green planet. This is where life is thriving, evolution is unfolding, and it is moving towards a divinization of this material life itself. Now, from integral point of view, it is an imperative future. But various schools forget about considering it as an imperative future. They did not even consider this as a possibility. They deny. And there is a reason for it. This object of the integral yoga must be accepted wholly by those who follow it, but the acceptance must not be in ignorance of the immense stumbling blocks that lie in the way of the achievement. On the contrary, we must be fully aware of the compelling cause of the refusal. There is a compelling cause of the refusal of so many other disciplines. He has not yet explained what is this compelling cause. We must be aware of the compelling cause, why they denied it, why they did not see the possibility, nor consider it as a imperative necessity. So many disciplines to regard even its possibility, much less its imperative character, as the true meaning of terrestrial existence. True meaning of terrestrial existence. As the expression of the divine here in matter, that is not even considered as a possibility. So why? What was the compelling reason, cause of this refusal? For here, in the works of life, in the earth nature, is the very heart of the difficulty that has driven philosophy to its heights of aloofness. So the very heart of difficulty is here in this earth nature that has driven philosophy to its aloofness and turned away even the eager eye of religion. Eager eye of religion. Religions are eager to reach out to people and convert them into their ways of seeing and thinking and feeling and their particular Godhead, their particular approach. Even these religions turn away. Philosophy makes itself aloof. Religion, even if it is eager, finally it will also tell you have to go into this formless, eternal, whatever be the heaven they envision. Turned away even the eager eye of religion from the malady of birth in a mortal body. The malady of birth. This had been the bad press that was given to spirituality by, or not spirituality, bad press on life itself. The malady of birth. Birth itself is a problem. Birth in this world was reduced into this problem to be resolved, and ending of this cycle of rebirth became the very object of spiritual traditions. The malady of birth in a mortal body. Body is mortal. It is bound by disease, aging, and death. So the mortal body into a distant paradise or a silent piece of nirvana. So that is what was proposed. There is a distant paradise beyond this world. We have to end the cycle of rebirth. We have to end this wheel of karma. We have to end the process of this life itself and go to the paradise that is distant, or a silent piece of nirvana where you have established yourself in the eternal, timeless, spaceless, formless existence. Dissolving everything, that is nirvana. So there is a difficulty with this material world. Therefore, they considered here in the works of life, in the earth nature, is the very heart of difficulty that has driven philosophy to its heights of aloofness and turned away even the eager eye of religion from the malady of birth in a mortal body to a distant paradise or a silent piece of nirvana. A way of pure knowledge is comparatively straightforward. So remember, we have the way of knowledge, way of love, and way of works. A way of pure knowledge is comparatively straightforward, easy to the tread of the seeker, in spite of our mental limitations and pitfalls of ignorance. So there is ignorance, mind, and the way of knowledge has to deal with ignorance. There are pitfalls, but relatively it is simple. A way of knowledge is comparatively straightforward and easy to the tread of the seeker in spite of our mental limitations. There are mental limitations, but regardless of the mental limitations, the way of knowledge is relatively simple and easy. and the pitfalls of ignorance. A way of pure love, although it has its stumbling blocks and its suffering and trials, can in comparison be as easy as the winging of a bird through the free azure. Bird flying through the blue vast sky. What a beautiful image. That it can be the way of love, can be in spite of its suffering, its trials, its stumbling blocks, it can still be like the bird that who flies into that blue vast. So there is the way of knowledge, way of love, both are relatively easy path compared to the way of works. And it's good to remember our most beautiful, most profound text on Karma Yoga, the Gita, is set in the battlefield. So a way of pure knowledge is comparatively straightforward and easy to the tread of the seeker in spite of our mental limitations and the pitfalls of ignorance. A way of pure love, although it has its stumbling blocks and its sufferings and trials, can in comparison be as easy as the winging of a bird through the free azure. For knowledge and love are pure in their essence. Here, Sri Aurobindo is quietly bringing us into the core difficulty. Why eventually people denied knowledge and love are pure in their essence and become mixed and embarrassed, corrupted and degraded only when they enter into the ambiguous movement of the life forces and are seized by them for the outward life's crude movements and obstinately inferior motives. So here is knowledge in its essence is pure. So is love, is pure. But the moment they enter into the outward flowing life motives, this is where it gets degraded, degenerated, and perverted. So only when they enter into the ambiguous movement of the life forces and are seized by them. So there is the movement of knowledge, movement of love. Both get seized by life forces. Within us, in our human nature, there is this impulsive movement of life, which we experience as desires and cravings and compulsions. So our love and knowledge get seized by these movements. So only when they enter into the ambiguous movement of life forces and are seized by them. Seized for what? For the outward life's crude movements and obstinately inferior motives. There is certain crudeness of movements and obstinately inferior motives. So these life impulses in our human body, first of all, it is seeking its food, its pleasure, to fulfill its desires, its hungers, its desires, its cravings, its attachments. All that comes into picture. And when it degrades further, that's where it becomes increasingly dark and perverse. So therefore, there is a loss of the purity of knowledge and love when they get seized by these powers. Knowledge and love are pure in their essence and become mixed and embarrassed, corrupted and degraded only when they enter into the ambiguous movement of the life forces and are seized by them for the outward life's crude movements and obstinately inferior motives. So even when we use our pure rational intelligence and arrive at decisions, and even when we decide based on our nobility of pure heart, We make various decisions. But we see that these decisions, when we enter into life and engage with life, they get overwritten by other impulses and desires and cravings. And intelligence surrenders to them, get corrupted. Our pure motive of the noble emotions get degraded, degenerated. The moment we engage with the life that is outward, engaging with every other life that is around, there the battle starts and degradation starts. Corruption begins. Alone of the three powers, life, or at least a certain predominant will in life, has the appearance of something impure, accursed, or fallen in its very essence. So this life flowing through us, this alone has this appearance. Here again, Sri Aurobindo is specifying it is actually an appearance. Compared to knowledge and love, our life impulses, life movements appears to be something impure, accursed, fallen in its essence. Whereas love and knowledge in its essence doesn't appear at all as fallen. There is certain nobility in seeking truth. There is certain nobility in seeking love. But life, seeking its desires and cravings and fulfillments, it's a demand for power, conquest. There seems to be something impure there. It appears to be something impure. So alone, the three powers, life, or at least a certain predominant will in life, not full life, but at least a certain predominant will in life. Again, that word will in life, capital W and capital life, and all connected by hyphens. Will in life, to assert, to conquer, has the appearance of something impure, accursed, or fallen in its very essence. So we have been seeing this human journey and our collective evolution, where in the animal world we see within an ecosystem there is eater, eaten, is eaten. There is killing and eating. But when it comes to human life, there is tremendous intelligence, knowledge, all that come under the service of these impulses, these fundamental drive of life to conquer, to sustain itself, even at the cost of eating up other life forms. Whereas in the noble nature, there is certain harmony and balance of the ecosystem maintained. But a human being can exaggerate it, and there is certain perversion that is possible within the human nature. That's where you see there is something that is corrupting, something that is distorting. So alone of the three powers, life, or at least a certain predominant will in life, has the appearance of something impure, accursed, or fallen in its very essence. At its contact, wrapped in its dull sheets. What are these dull sheets? Our body is a very obscure, dull sheath. Annamaya kosha. Annamaya kosha is the Sanskrit term for the physical material body. It is of food. It is a result of what we have eaten. And this material body exists by eating, and it has to eat other life forms in order to sustain itself, whether it is plant life or animal life. Eat it must. And it is a dull sheath. It is within that life energy emerges. And within that is the will to life and assertion of one's life and existence come into play. So, in the early stages of evolution, we see the survival of the fittest. The rules of the game are brutal. Power versus power. Might is right. At its contact, wrapped in its dull sheets, or caught in its iridescent quagmires. Iridescent. There is a certain glow of light and radiance that is possible. Caught in its iridescent quagmires, that is kind of a soft, boggy area of land, slushy, and it can have its little glow here and there. The divinities themselves become common and muddy and hardly escape the being dragged downwards into its perversions and disastrously assimilated into the demon and the asura. So, even when the divine forces enter, the divinities themselves become common and muddy. When you deal with life, engage with life, you can see that all your ideals begins to get compromised, because the life is having its own power game that is playing out in terms of its selfishness, self-centeredness, because we are dealing with a field of egos in conflict, each ego asserting itself upon other egos, and there is a downward gravitation into the perversions of that nature. At its contact, wrapped in its dull sheets or caught in its iridescent quagmires, the divinities themselves become common and muddy. They become very like a commoner and muddy, and hardly escape from being dragged downwards. You get dragged into the muddle of the world. Like those who, we see people who enter into politics with noble intentions. Idealists jump into politics and they discover what a hard field of work it is, and you get muddy, you get muddled up in that nature, get dragged downwards by the forces into its perversions and disastrously assimilated into the demon and the asura. And you get assimilated into the demon and the asura, the destructive powers of the ego. So at its contact, wrapped in its dull sheets or caught in its iridescent quagmires, the divinities themselves become common and muddy and hardly escape from being dragged downwards into its perversions and disastrously assimilated to the demon and asura. So for many people on the path, often they find certain breakthrough, certain light enters, certain divine gifts come your way. But you soon find when you engage with the larger life, they get dragged down into the muddiness and they get distorted, perverted, and the egoism takes over. The asuric nature of the self-centered ego eventually takes over and gets perverted, gets distorted. And this happens. And that's why all the powers were shunned by various seekers, various schools, disciplines. They said, don't look for any siddhis and powers, because with these things easily gets distorted, perverted. At its contact, wrapped in its dull sheets or caught in its iridescent quagmires, the divinities themselves become common and muddy and hardly escape being dragged downwards into its perversions and disastrously assimilated into the demon and the asura. So people with often many of the siddhis get assimilated and eaten up by the demon and the asura and become the play of forces. The display of that gigantic, amplified ego. A principle of dark and dull inertia is at its base. Our life here on earth has body as its material base, and the body is a material frame. And body's nature is tamas, principle of inertia, and it is built on habits of material nature. Within that, life is unfolding, and it follows pretty much the cycles of desire, which is an inheritance of that inertia into the life and its needs. The hunger for food, drive for sex. So eating, mating, playing, sleeping, this cycle repeats. So a principle of dark and dull inertia is at its base. All are tied down by the body and its needs and desires to a trivial mind. So there is a mind within us that has emerged, but it is still a trivial mind. It may decide, but it will be overwritten by the body and its needs and life needs and impulses and desires. All are tied down by the body and its needs and desires, bodily needs and desires, to a trivial mind, petty desires and emotions, an insignificant repetition of small, worthless functionings. Insignificant repetition of small, worthless functionings. So when we live like an animal, daily routines are more or less fixed. Eating, mating, playing, sleeping. Nothing more to life. Reproduce, propagate, survive, exist. It's an insignificant repetition of small, worthless functionings, needs, cares, occupations, pains, pleasures that lead to nothing beyond themselves. So this whole cycle doesn't lead you beyond themselves. It runs within this cycle of eating, mating, sleeping, propagating itself. You may have more elaborate machinery and sophistication brought into all this, but end of the day, life and its purpose goes around eating, mating, sleeping, playing, nothing else. It goes round and round and round, and bear the stamp of an ignorance that knows not its own why and whither. The whole purpose of life gets reduced into pure material needs of body and the little petty desires, needs, compulsions. And that repeats again and again and again and again and again. So a principle of dark and dull inertia at its base. All are tied down by the body and its needs and desires to a trivial mind, petty desires and emotions, an insignificant repetition of small worthless functionings, needs, cares, occupations, pains, pleasures that leads to nothing beyond themselves, and bear the stamp of an ignorance that knows not its own why and whither. The very question of purpose of life doesn't arise. This physical mind of inertia believes in no divinity other than its own small gods. It aspires perhaps to a greater comfort, order, pleasure, but asks for no uplifting and no spiritual deliverance. When we look at our modern materialistic civilization built on scientific materialism, science begins its journey with understanding of matter, the material world, laws of physics, starting with the discovery of inertia itself, laws of motion, and builds on it. And it has no vision of purpose of life. It has figured out the material processes of life, but not a larger reason why life exists. What is the purpose? Is there any spiritual purpose at all? These are not the scientific questions at all. You cannot ask such questions. You can ask laws of physics, laws of chemistry. And within that frame, what it does is providing comforts to life. How to make life comfortable, materially comfortable. How to save time from back-breaking labor, so that life become increasingly comfortable. These are the earth gods. It aspires perhaps to greater comfort, order, pleasure. This is our modern civilization's primary contribution, giving a materially comfortable life. It's great, it's a good foundation, but it is insufficient without a higher purpose for life. That's the reason why in the so-called developed nations, more precisely economically and materially developed nations, once all these material comforts and needs are taken care and well established, when there is no higher purpose to life, naturally people fall into all kinds of material, sensual pleasures and its cravings and its degeneration, or fall into loneliness and depression, because you have all the material comforts but meaning and purpose is lost, and loneliness and depression become very, very common. So this physical mind of inertia, again physical mind is a technical term of Sri Aurobindo, a mind that is tied to the physical world, the material world, and its reality is nothing but this material physical world, and it builds its narratives around it, its needs around it. And this is the physical mind of inertia, believes in no divinity because it cannot perceive anything that is subtle. It needs this gross appearance. Even when it is studying consciousness, it has to measure the neurons, the electrical signals, all that material processes where it feels safe, something tangible that I can hold. You don't need a divinity to explain anything. Everything can be explained in terms of firing of neurons, and that is what consciousness is for. That type of a hard physical mind that cannot grasp things that are beyond the physical. This physical mind of inertia believes in no divinity other than its own small earth gods. It aspires perhaps to a greater comfort, order and pleasure, but asks for no uplifting or no spiritual deliverance. That is its limitation of the physical mind. It cannot look beyond the physical world and it cannot perceive. It's a limitation of the cognitive instrument itself. Therefore, it never asks for any uplifting or ask for no uplifting and no spiritual deliverance. At the center, we meet a stronger will of life with a greater gusto, but it is a blind daemon, a perverted spirit, and exults in the very elements that make make of life a striving turmoil and an unhappy imbroglio. So this will to life, now it's not just in the individuals, it expands into the will to life of nations, and the nations struggling against other nations to dominate, to control. The will to life. And that these nations investing huge amount of their wealth in producing weapons to kill other life. First it starts with defending oneself, then dominating others, controlling others. This is where it leads to. And this will to life with a greater gusto, but it is a blinded demon, a perverted spirit, and exults in its very elements that makes of life a striving turmoil of an unhappy imbroglio. Our so-called glorified geopolitics is that imbroglio of human life that is still pretty much bound by the gross egos, national egos, fighting against each other, trying to dominate, trying to control, try to exploit, live on other people's expenses. Fortunately, we have crossed over the colonization that was more stark and dark. Now, the same colonization is attempted through other forms of domination, whether it is through dominating through monetary system, technology system, or sophisticated media control, narrative control. Whatever be the way, modern limited visions of life, it tend to repeat the demonic nature of man, unless you discover something much more spiritual and fundamental and beautiful and free, and the notion of oneness is yet to establish in the world. So it is still the ego clash and battles that are going on. The whole geopolitics is all about bargains and control. If you cannot control and conquer, you start bargaining. And this outer sophistication is only a pretense. Behind it is all the weapons waiting to be used if you get a chance. At the center, we meet a stronger will of life with a greater gusto, but it is a blind demon, a perverted spirit, and exults in the very elements that make of life a striving turmoil and an unhappy imbroglio. This is a soul of human or titanic desire, clinging to the garish color, disordered poetry, garish color, disordered poetry, violent tragedy, or stirring melodrama. The violent tragedy, stirring melodrama. If you look at the modern wars that are unfolding in the world, these are, again, we see an opportunity for industrial military complex to sell more weapons. Wars are now fully recorded, accuracy and precision of weapons that become product demonstration and marketing. And selling the weapons become the biggest industry. It is a soul of human or titanic desire clinging to a garish color, disordered poetry, violent tragedy, or stirring melodrama. So in this stirring melodrama, the media is used to its fullest advantage, each one playing the victim of the aggression of the other, the violence against children, the violence against women, the violence against nature, and these emotionally stirring drama is brought out. And war goes on and on. of this mixed flux of good and evil, joy and sorrow, light and darkness, heady rapture and bitter torture. This is generally the human life, the perversion of power, misuse of power, misunderstanding of the right use of power. It is a soul of human or titanic desire for building empires, to destroy other empires, in the marketplace to destroy your competitors by unhealthy business practices, to dominate whatever way you can. And all this justified by philosophies proclaiming that the whole nature of life on earth is nothing but survival of the fittest, and you have to compete, fight against others. These are all justifications given to dominate, to control, to exploit, to destroy. This is that will to life that is become demonic in its nature. It is a soul of human or titanic desire, clinging to the garish color, disordered poetry, violent tragedy, or stirring melodrama of this mixed flux of good and evil, joy and sorrow, light and darkness, heady rapture and bitter torture. It loves these things and would have more and more of them, or even when it suffers and cries out against them, can accept or joy in nothing else. So when the pain and suffering is to my people, on my side, my life, my community, my country, my culture, my religion, then you cry out, this is evil, this should not be done. But when it is happening to somebody else, you deserve it. That's how the human nature works. Or you don't care. It is happening to other people. It is their problem, not my problem. As long as it is not in my backyard, it is not happening to me and my clan, it's all right. If it is against me, I will cry out against it. Otherwise, it's a nice thing you can watch on the TV, how the bombs are dropped, how they are exploding, how many people were killed. It is just a movie that I am fascinated by, and TV channels thrive on it, build on drama, melodrama. That's how life is being run here by our media, our existing civilizational values. So it loves these things and would have more and more of them, or even when it suffers and cries out against them, can accept or joy in nothing else. It hates and revolts against higher things. That's its very nature. It hates and revolts against higher things. It will hunt and hunt down everything, anything that denies these control it has, and in its fury would trample, tear, or crucify the diviner power that has the presumption to offer to make life pure, luminous, and happy, and snatch from its lips the fiery brew of that exciting mixture. Christ was crucified. The man who brought in love, who declared that God is love, who opened the path of love and devotion to a large portion of humanity. He was crucified because prevailing culture couldn't handle it, couldn't accept it. the one who violated the order that was prevailing. So he had to be crucified. In its fury would trample, tear, or crucify any diviner power that has the presumption to offer to make life pure, luminous, and happy. So who want harmony and peace? War is far more exciting. It is great to watch real war in real time than reading a beautiful, sophisticated poetry, literature. That has become the tendencies of fallen nature. The diviner powers that has the presumption to offer to make life pure, luminous, and happy, and snatch from its lips the fiery brew of that exciting mixture. So this is how modern life unfolds. Another will in life there is that is ready to follow the ameliorating ideal mind. And is allured by its offer to extract some harmony, beauty, light, nobler order out of life. But this is a smaller part of the human vital nature and can be easily overpowered by its more violent or darker, duller yoke comrades. So on one hand, we have this strong will to life that wants to conquer and control and dominate. But we also have another one, another will in life there is that is ready to follow the ameliorating ideal mind. Ameliorating ideal mind. Our human mind is a seeker of perfection. So there is this unsatisfactory life here, and mind will come up with its little ideals. So there is a part of our life energy, that allies with this part of the mind. And then this is what happens. That is ready to follow the ameliorating ideal mind and is allured by its offer. So this mind with its offer of making life better, to extract some harmony, beauty, light, nobler order out of life. So this is what mind offers. Here is the philosophy of communism, capitalism, this ism, that ism, to offer what? Some harmony, beauty, light, nobler order out of life. So mind will give its philosophical visions, dreams, and this life energy in us, a portion of it will align with it. But this is a smaller part of the vital nature. We have a full spectrum of the vital nature, and Sri Aurobindo divides vital into higher vital, central vital, lower vital. Out of that, it is the higher, more nobler part of the vital that aligns with the mind and its philosophy. But it's a smaller part of the vital nature and can be easily overpowered. It's more violent and darker, duller yoke comrades. Yoke comrades. He is combining words in such an amazing way. Yoke comrade. It is, these three vitals are all yoked together. It's one vital but having various layers to it. They are all working together. So even if that one of the portions of the vital life energy in us aligns with the mind and its idealism, which promises order, harmony, but other layers, they will easily overpower this fellow. So this is a smaller part of the vital nature, and can be easily overpowered by its more violent or darker, duller yoke comrades. Nor does it readily lend itself to a call higher than that of the mind, unless that call defeats itself, as religion usually does, by lowering its demand to conditions more intelligible to our obscure vital nature. So, it doesn't really lend itself to the call of a higher than that of the mind. So, on one hand, there is a call of the mind. So, we have the life energy. Let's look at it in terms of these layers. We have physical layer, then there is a vital layer, there is a life energy, then there is the mind. So, the upper layer of the vital can listen to the mind, but these lower layers of the vital will easily overpower it. But there are calls beyond mind, coming from higher ranges of our consciousness, that it does not readily lend itself to a call higher than that of the mind, unless that call defeats itself, as religion usually does, by lowering its demand to conditions more intelligible to our obscure vital nature. So, this is what religion does. Religion, on one hand, has a higher call from the domains beyond the mind, from the spiritual domains. At least the founders who ascend to a higher level bring that experience, that knowledge, and gives to people, and people make a religion out of it. So, at the core, there is the call from higher. But in order to be practical and to reach out to wider life that is around, they have to lower the standards to meet the requirements of life there on the marketplace. Then only you can have the masses. So, unless the demands of the higher is lowered to the level of this vital nature, you cannot have access. So, religion does this compromise. As a result, it defeats its own purpose. Purpose is to lift things up to a higher nature. But in order to approach the higher nature and get its consent, it lowers the demands of the higher nature and deals with the life nature and its needs with all the compromises. Thus, it defeats its own purpose. Nor does it readily lend itself to a call higher than that of the mind, unless that call defeats itself, as religion usually does, by lowering its demand to conditions more intelligible to our obscure vital nature. Our vital nature is quite obscure in its compulsions, cravings, and that's where it gets lost. Lowering its demand to conditions more intelligible to our obscure vital nature. It has to understand. Only when it understands, it will accept. In order to make it understand, we compromise and reduce the whole thing. And in the process, everything gets lost. So, these are the two different requirements that comes. Mind's little philosophies or a higher call. Mind's philosophies can be easily overwritten, overpowered, and higher call, unless it is reduced into this nature, lower nature, it won't be accepted, and the moment it is reduced, you lost the game already. So, another will in life is there that is ready to follow the ameliorating ideal mind and is allured by its offer to extract some harmony, beauty, light, nobler order out of life. But this is a smaller part of the vital nature that can be easily overpowered by its more violent and darker, duller yoke comrades. Nor does it readily lend itself to a call higher than that of the mind, unless that call defeats itself, as religion usually does, by lowering its demand to conditions more intelligible to our obscure vital nature. All these forces the spiritual seeker grows aware of in himself and finds all around him. So initially, when the yogic journey begins, there is a lot of romantic idealism. And you may not even be aware of these complexities of life and its very nature. Gradually, initially you may think that world has the problem. It is other people having this kind of obscure drives, compulsions, forces in them, not in me. But the deeper you go, that is where you discover all these forces the spiritual seeker grows aware of in himself and finds all around him. So not only in himself, all around, and has to struggle and combat incessantly to be rid of their grip and dislodge the long entrenched mastery they have exercised over his own being as over the environing human existence. So these forces have a grip in humanity. That means it has a grip in you, and this is what you discover. All these forces the spiritual seeker grows aware of in himself and finds all around him, and has to struggle and combat incessantly to be rid of their grip. So that in order to get rid of the grip of these forces, there is a battle. Kurukshetra. That battle is combat incessantly to be rid of their grip and dislodge the long entrenched mastery. They have to be dislodged. They are like tenants sitting in the house. They are been there for a long time and they are not ready to let go. And it's quite a battle to get them out of your home. Dislodge the long entrenched mastery they have exercised. And they also have certain mastery over your being. They have to be dislodged. Mastery they have exercised over his own being as over the environing human existence. So it has its mastery over the environing human existence, and therefore you also see that it has mastery over you. So first is to eliminate it from within, then only one can even consider the possibility of eliminating it from the environing life surrounding you. The difficulty is great, for their hold is so strong, so apparently invincible, that it justifies the disdainful dictum which compares human nature to a dog's tail. For straighten it never so much by force of ethics, religion, reason, or any other redemptive effort. It returns in the end always to the crooked curl of nature. This was the most painful discovery of so many great masters who tried to change things. Through ethics, religion, reason, or any other redemptive effort. So there had been all these efforts to change, straighten this dog's tail, but it will curl back into the old form. No matter how many times you attempt, it will last as long as that pressure is there. The moment the pressure is gone, it goes back. The difficulty is great, for their hold is so strong, so apparently invincible, that it justifies the disdainful dictum. This is the disdainful dictum, which compares human nature to a dog's tail. Our human nature cannot be changed. That was the conclusion many of them arrived at. And this is the reason why they eventually concluded, forget about this nature, get out of it. So apparently invincible that it justifies the disdainful dictum which compares human nature to a dog's tail. For straighten it never so much by force of ethics, religion, reason, or any other redemptive effort, it returns in the end always to the crooked curl of nature. And so great is the whim, the clutch of that more agitated life will. This part of our being is quite an agitated, restless, compulsive force in us, which we can experience in our daily life. The explosive anger and its need to explode, the restlessness it gives, the agitated nature it brings to us, this is that life energy in us, life will. So great is the whim, the clutch of that more agitated life will, so immense the peril of its passions and errors. Because it's a very powerful energy and it can become very intensely passionate and it creates plenty of errors in that process. So immense the peril of its passions and errors, so subtly insistent on persistently invasive So it is on one hand subtly insistent, then it is persistently invasive, so obstinate up to the very gates of heaven. It will obstinately persist till the very gates of heaven, the fury of its attack. It is ready to attack anything that it may consider to be a potential threat to its own empire, its own control, its own mastery. So obstinate up to the very gates of heaven, the fury of its attack, or the tedious obstructions of its obstacles. That even the saint and the yogin cannot be sure of their liberated purity or their tainted self-mastery against the intrigue or its violence. Even for a yogin or a saint, it's very difficult to be sure of their liberated purity because these forces can anytime invade and grip from inside without you having even time to realize that the grip has deepened. And so great is the whim, the clutch of that more agitated life will, so immense the peril of its passionate errors, so subtly insistent or persistently invasive, so obstinate up to the very gates of heaven, the fury of its attack, or the tedious obstructions of its obstacles, that even to the saint and the yogin cannot be sure of their liberated purity or their trained self-mastery. It's trained, not tainted, trained self-mastery against its intrigue or its violence. It's hard to protect oneself from the violence. All labor to straighten out this native crookedness strikes the struggling will as a futility. So the little human will trying to correct this, try to straighten this, find it's impossible, it's futile. All labor to straighten out this native crookedness. It's a native crookedness that is already there lodged within us. The native crookedness strikes the struggling will, the struggling human will, as a futility. A flight, a withdrawal to happy heavens, or peaceful dissolution easily finds credit as the only wisdom. So, naturally, the possibility of happy heaven, a peaceful dissolution in that happy heaven, gains credit as the only wisdom worth following. And to find a way not to be born again gets established as the only remedy for the dull bondage or the poor shoddy delirium or the blinded and precarious happiness and achievement of earthly existence. So they conclude that this dull bondage or the poor shoddy delirium, this very life on earth, it's a very shoddy delirium, the blinded and precarious happiness and achievements of earthly existence. This whole life is misery, dukkha, maya. Forget it. You have to end this misery. The way to end it is ending this whole issue of rebirth. Ending the wheel of birth, cycle of rebirth has to be erased entirely. That position finds its justification in this extreme difficulty we find in the very life nature itself, very vital nature, its will to life, its compulsiveness, its passionate intensity, its refusal to obey any philosophy, its tendency to distort anything that is brought down from above. It's as if it is, in its very essence, it is something dark and incurable, insurmountable. Therefore, this invitation to nirvana, the invitation to the otherworldly heaven, become the most wonderful promise you can give to humanity. So all labor to straighten out this native crookedness strikes the struggling will as a futility. A flight, a withdrawal to happy heaven, or peaceful dissolution easily finds credit as the only wisdom. And to find a way not to be born again gets established as the only remedy. And this is what happened in India in the last few millennia. This whole idea of ending the cycle of rebirth. And we see it's being still propagated by many spiritual teachers. What is the purpose of spiritual growth? It is to end the cycle of rebirth, to end this wheel of karma, to put a stop to rebirth, get out. This is a fundamental error. We must be bold enough to stand up and say, here Sri Aurobindo is saying this is an error. And he has given the entire picture why it is considered by many to be the only solution. Because the life nature is difficult, but the difficulty is not the reason to arrive at such a conclusion. All labor to straighten out this native crookedness strikes the struggling will as a futility, a flight, a withdrawal to happy heaven, a peaceful dissolution easily finds credit as the only wisdom, and to find a way not to be born again gets established as the only remedy to the dull bondage or the poor shoddy delirium or the blinded and precarious happiness and achievement of earthly existence. Wow, that is quite a journey. This is one of the most amazing things about Sri Aurobindo. He goes into all these details. He finds the reason why such a denial took place and what was the justification. And here is the difficulty in us, this will to life, a particular vital nature within us, not its sophisticated layer, but there is a crude layer which is impossible to deal with. And it is because of that, the denialism, the ascetic tendencies, all that emerged, of which we need to become conscious of. And Sri Aurobindo is also giving us the solution to this problem, which we will take up in the coming episodes. So with that, we come to the end of this episode. Thank you for being with me in this journey. I hope you're enjoying. Looking forward to hear your sharings. Those who are new, please do subscribe to the channel so that you can get the notification. Don't forget to click the bell icon so that the notification is very clear. And see you next week. Thank you.